Well, hello everyone. Welcome back to Adrian's Digital Basement 2. On today's video, we're going to be taking a look at this really fun and cool little portable VCR. And you can see that it's relatively small. And I mean, VCRs are not uncommon, but I do kind of love how little and small this one is. Before we get started with that though, I just want to do a little bit of channel housekeeping. People may have noticed that I didn't have a main channel video last weekend. Well, at least when I'm recording this, it's on the 30th of June. And that's because when I got back from VCF Southwest, which was an absolute blast, I seem to have picked up a foodborne illness. I think I might have picked it up in Texas, although I'm not 100% sure. You can never really tell with that kind of stuff. And while I got a little bit sick while I was in Texas, and when I got home, I got better. And then I was fine for about a week working on the Plexus P20, which of course those videos are up on the channel right now. So in fact, to be honest, the fact that there was no Saturday video just probably gave people a chance to catch up on all those Plexus videos if they hadn't already. Anyhow, I was working on that thing and then I got sick again. The foodborne stuff came back and really took me out. Fever, all that kind of stuff. I was stuck in bed for a number of days. And now finally I have gotten better, but unfortunately I'm better per se, as in I don't have like the fever and those other symptoms that I had from having the whole GI thing. But it left me with something that's common for me personally, is if I ever have a foodborne illness, which has been like 3 or 4 times in my entire life. What happens is after I'm fixed up from the initial upset, it leaves my stomach all off kilter. And even right now, I just had some soup for lunch, not very much, and I feel really nauseous. And unfortunately, I know my history with this, and this is gonna last for a week or a few weeks when my stomach is just very sensitive to basically anything. So right now, as I record this video, I feel a little bit nauseous, which unfortunately takes away from a little bit of my normal energy and enthusiasm for things, just because I have this background feeling of, well, being sick right now. Now, luckily, I'm not going to be running to the bathroom or anything like that. It's just like a feeling I get in my stomach, and my digestive system is so slow. And I am type 1 diabetic, which means that it really throws off everything when it comes to giving myself insulin, and it's a bit scary, to be honest, because the food just sits in my stomach. It doesn't do anything. And if I have low blood sugar, normally I would drink a little juice or eat some candy to counteract that. Well, this happened last night. After eating dinner, I took a bit too much insulin and I gave myself way less than normal because I knew what to expect here. And yet my blood sugar was still teetering on low. So I drank some juice and it had absolutely zero effect. It had none. I drank a bunch of pineapple juice and I could see my blood sugar on my pump, and it just stayed flat. It did nothing. So yeah, things are a mess right now for me. But even with that said, I still love playing around with this old junk like this, this old VCR here. And that's what we're gonna do today on the second channel. All right, let's just move this thing off the bench. We don't need that right now. So the VCR we're looking at here is a Goldstar, a digital auto track wireless Remocon AC/DC 12 volt, and the model number is GCP-C135. I really love the layout of the buttons here. I mean, they could be a little more cool, but for something that came out in the 90s when everything was starting to get kind of boring, it's neat to see this teal color play button and then the kind of baby blue stop button. You'll notice this VCR is strictly a playback only VCR, so it has no record functionality. It's funny because I don't know how much extra work that would have taken to add to this, but I think for the intended use case that this VCR had, they just thought that there would be no point to actually add that functionality. We have tracking controls up and down, so you don't need the remote, which is good because I don't have the remote, even though the Remocon probably added maybe some extra functionality. I don't know. We have an A repeat, so I assume that's automatic repeat. Just will keep playing back the tape over and over again. Stop, eject, which is a nice up arrow, so you can see it from a distance without having to read the label there. That's that little up button is going to be eject. We got power, and we have the transport controls, including, it says still. And we do have 2x play speed, but I don't know if we have any shuttle or frame advance type controls. Now, who knows what's on the remote control? It's possible that you could do stuff like that on there. And that's all there really is to say on the front of this unit. Now, I saw a picture of this thing online and it had a cool 90s looking triangular teal color sticker here that is gone from this VCR. And as you can see, the size of this thing is really compact. I'm just gonna grab a tape. So here's the size of VHS tape. So you can see that there's not a lot of wasted space inside this VCR. It's pretty small, which I think is pretty awesome. Now looking at the back of the unit, We can see here that we have RF in and out, but this thing does not have a tuner, right? So it's just simply a pass-through or an RF modulator for the output of this VCR. Channel 3/4 selector, we have a fuse there, 2 amp. We have AV outputs right here. You notice it's only mono, so I don't think there's any kind of hi-fi on this VCR. And I'm assuming it doesn't have 4 heads or 6 heads. This thing is strictly a standard VHS player and nothing more. Goldstar, which, correct me if I'm wrong, that is LG before they rebranded themselves. And there's that model number again. And you can see DC 12 volts, 16 watts. And there it is, just a standard center positive DC barrel input jack. I kind of like it. Also notice on the back here, there are these little feet here that basically allow this VCR to stand on its backside. And when it's standing on these feet, it actually will not impact any of the connectors here. So these F connector jacks here do not extend beyond the little feet. So this thing can actually just sit perfectly on these feet. I don't know, for storage, I guess. And what's actually kind of cool is if I just place it on those feet, one thing that I've noticed is they took the extra effort to make sure that the door flap does not open when it's sitting on its backside like this. Most VCRs, if you put them on their end like this, the door will flip open. But the spring tension on the door is enough that it can actually open and close when it's sitting in this vertical orientation. Part of me wonders is if you can actually play a tape in this orientation as well. So I guess that's something we can test out once we get the lid off this thing and see if it even works. Now you might be wondering, why does it have this functionality? Why would it be designed to stand like this? Why would it run on 12 volts DC? Well, I think some of you watching are probably going to know exactly what the use of this VCR was, and this is for portable applications inside a camper van, an RV, recreational vehicle, camper, whatever it's called in your country. I think the whole idea of this would be you would have this installed in your portable home, which drove down the road, and typically those have a 12 volt system. They have a 120 volt system typically to power up microwaves and stuff like that. But generally, if you're not running the inverter, you want to have stuff that works off 12 volts. So it would be really common for people to have a VCR just like this, and then they would pair it to a television like this little Sony here. And this little Sony Trinitron came in 2 different variants. One was a white color variant that only ran on 120 volts. It was designed for use inside like a kitchen or something. But this dark color one was actually for use inside RVs, and it has 2 power supplies inside. One for 120 volts and another that's a 12 volt or 12 to 15 volt power supply for use in those RVs with VCRs just like this. Now I can't demonstrate that because this particular set, I swapped out the guts from one of the kitchen ones, which is why it's white color down here, and this has the RGB mod on it. And I don't have the original coiled power cable that would have been on the kitchen version. But the original guts in this thing has an extra board on the side here, which essentially is a power supply that takes that 12 volts DC and converts that to the B plus that this set needs, which is like 140 volts or something like that. So that's the little extra work inside there. But I think these 12 volt type sets were pretty common, and you can see the compact size of this set suits this little VCR perfectly. And I think the era that this TV came out was actually a similar time to the VCR. It says 1996. And from my reading online, it seems like this VCR came out around 1993, 1994. We'll hopefully see a date code when we open this thing up. There's currently none on the outside of it. My assumption is that the VCR was designed to operate in the vertical orientation simply because maybe it'd be mounted inside like a center console or something like that, where you have radios and other things, and then you might have the VCR there. Imagine a configuration in a limousine as an example, where this VCR was there for people in the back of the limo, and maybe the driver could insert a tape, or there would be a selection of movies there for the people who are riding in the back, and they could watch their own movies. So when I first got this VCR, I did verify that it does power up. I didn't put a tape in there and play anything. There's no tape in there currently. I did plug it into power. It turns off and on, so that's good. So the power supply is working. But that's about the extent of what I know about this thing. If we take a look at the bottom here, it looks like it's designed for pretty easy serviceability. Looks like we have one screw here, and this bottom cover, I think, should come off. There we go. This probably gives us access, hopefully, to the mode switch and the belts, if there are any. And obviously our belt is in okay shape there. Looks okay. I'm no VCR expert, but I'd say that that's the mode switch right there. But what can happen with the mode switch on VHS VCRs is this is what allows the microcontroller to know what state the VCR is in. So as the gubbins move around when it's loading the tape around the heads and stuff like that, this thing rotates around, it has a bunch of contacts, and if that gets dirty inside and stops reading properly, then what happens is it can't figure out what state the VCR is in, it'll just like shut down and stuff like that. But that's pretty cool. This cover came off really easily from a serviceability standpoint. I mean, look how easy it is to take that belt off. I'd say by looking at this, I don't think this thing has got a lot of use. It's in pretty good shape. Everything is pretty clean here. The gears aren't cracked or anything. There's the head. It seems to turn pretty smoothly. Obviously for VHS, the whole like M loading mechanism here, it means that you need to make sure these tracks are greased and you have like the right amount of lithium grease on the various gears and things like that. Looks like there's some more gears and stuff behind there. Everything is looking really good though. And this mechanism here will slide side to side. You can see a bit of grease on there. So we can leave that cover off. And next thing to do is let's just pop this top cover off. Looks like we have a couple screws on the back. Now I say by the 90s here, VHS had been really simplified and figured out for the most part. Like a lot of the initial complexity that was there on those early 80s VCRs was gone. And then you're left with stuff that's pretty highly optimized like this. Now this is nothing like the VCRs that came in the 2000s at the very end of the run. Those were so cost optimized where like the controller board was almost nothing and things like that. But nonetheless, you know, VHS is VHS and they all work generally the same way. So we need to be able to get to the stuff that's under here. I want to take a look at the heads and see how clean they are. So my assumption is we got to take the screws out that have the arrows pointing to them. So we have an arrow there, an arrow here. Oddly enough, there's an arrow there, but there was no screw there. So has someone been in here, or is that just someone forget to put that in? Or is this a cost saving thing? This one is missing as well. Now these two screws don't have arrows, so my assumption is they don't need to come out. Okay, so how does this work? Oh, okay, yep. So it looks like the whole back panel here, this all slides up with the PCB. Well, I really like that serviceability. Now, unfortunately, you can see here that there are these slot connectors that connect to the PCB. So this cannot operate like this. It just allows for easy cleaning, but there are some strategic holes in the PCB which are probably there for doing some adjustments while the VCR is operating. I'm not likely to do any of those, but the tape guides, which basically as the tape loads, it wraps around the heads, and there are these guides here that you need to adjust to get the tracking and everything working correctly. And you probably have to do that with this board in place through these holes. Now, one observation I want to make is take a look at this Mitsumi RF modulator or tuner or RF switch or whatever it is. Notice how it has a jack there. That's kind of intriguing. I don't really get that. We can see there's the input to the modulator, V in, A in, and VCC, and these are ground pins. Doesn't really have too much else going on, so I don't know what that extra jack is used for, but maybe that's just an additional RF output in addition to the standard F connector. On this board, we can see that there are lots of capacitors, so if this thing has leaky caps, well, that's going to be a problem. Now you might be wondering what all this stuff is here, and on the back side you might have seen a little bit of brown. That is not from the caps leaking, that is just flux residue. This is all through-hole solder, obviously. So yeah, that's what that is. But I wouldn't be too concerned about that, and well, to be honest, if this thing has cap problems or it needs all those caps replaced, would it be worth it for a VCR like this? Not so sure about that. Now I'm trying to see if I see a date code on here. Nothing really jumps out at me, and the ICs mostly don't have markings that look like date codes. This says LA7189, for instance, and this one says LA7117. Oh, correction, there's a date code right there, 1994, 42nd week. So there we go, we know now this thing is from 1994. Don't know when this was released, but at least that is when this one was made. All right, so taking a look at the transport here, it's in pretty good shape. It's pretty clean. This thing doesn't get a lot of use. It did definitely get use though. Now looking at the heads here, we can see that this is a 2-head VCR. So there's one of the heads right there. It's just exposed right there in that slit. And the second one is right there. Typically in VHS, a 4-head VCR is used for things like trick play. When you're in EP mode, It just gives you better stability, and you get a clear picture without a bunch of static in it when you have 4 heads. This is only a 2-head VCR, so trick play is not going to work so great, especially in EP mode. But since this thing, like I said, was playback only, it's probably just used to play back movies in SP, the faster speed. And in that case, 2 heads is generally fine. And there would also be additional heads for the hi-fi sound if there were hi-fi on this thing, but it does not have that either. So there you go, it's just a simple 2-head VCR. Now you can see this thing here, this little like fabric roll, this is used to clean the heads, and as the tape is being ejected, the head is still spinning. This will get pushed against there. And you can see there's a little bit of a black line right there. That is from it picking up the oxides that were deposited on the heads, and they're picked up on this roller. I think on some VCRs this can turn to goo and mess up the heads, but this is a kind of a fabric-y material, and I guess it's completely fine. What you can do is just remove it. You just pop off this little cover here and take that thing off, and then it will no longer have an effect. So if you have a VCR, it's got one of those, you might want to just pop that off, and then you're just going to have to clean the heads yourself. Because this is only a 2-head VCR, the sound is going to be picked up over here. This thing here picks up the tracking information. Let's tilt the VCR so you can see it a bit better. So I think that there is the audio head, and it's basically a linear track on the edge of the tape. And the other one is used for control signal information. It has to do with the tracking and sync and stuff like that. And you do need to clean this as well. If it gets gummed up, it can be a problem. Down here, you can see this roller here. It's the pinch roller. This gets pushed against the tape, against this, the capstan, and that's what actually regulates the tape speed. So it threads the tape around all this, comes through here, and then that clamps onto the tape and actually is what feeds the tape through at the correct speed. So you really need to make sure the pinch roller is clean, it's not all gummy and falling apart, and the same with the capstan. Now it's in the up position here, but when you load this in, this thing is gonna move into the down position and then push against the capstan there. If you're working on a VCR, don't ever turn things like this. See, there's an adjustment right there with a little bit of a mark on there. Don't just turn things randomly. You're just gonna be asking for problems. Right here and here are the tape guides, and these are adjustable as well, but don't turn those unless, well, you need to, or you know how to do that adjustment. That's a little bit beyond the scope of what I know how to do either. You got to hook an oscilloscope up and then put a test tape on, then you can adjust these while playback is happening just to get that switching point correct. Because a video head has 2 heads, right? And as it spins, it has to switch back and forth between each one. And moving these guides will shift the tape around a little bit on the head, which of course changes where that switching is happening and can cause issues like that. Right here are the tape reels, and you can see this, what looks like a rubber band on there. It's actually more like a fabric band, and this has to do with the back tension. So as the tape is playing, there has to be back tension on the feed reel here, because what happens is if there isn't, the tape is just too loose and won't be pushed up against the head properly. So this is actually cinched down as playback begins, and I think that happens, like, see this moves right, that pulls that band there and actually gives some tension on this, and the correct amount of tension is what you need for it to work properly. Too much tension and the tape could stop playback in the middle, or drag or be too slow, and too little, and again there won't be enough tension against the heads and it won't read as well. So this kind of shows you how mechanical this whole thing is. There's a whole balancing act going on with tape playback. That's amazing how it got so optimized as the years went on that we're able to make these VCRs so cheaply and pretty reliable as well, which is kind of amazing. And this VCR, being from 1994, is basically 30 years old, and yet it's a good chance this thing is just gonna work properly, maybe with the heads cleaned and things like that. All right, for cleaning this thing up a little bit, we got some chamois tips here, and these were sent in by a viewer. It's been a while now, but thank you very much. As you can see, it's essentially designed for cleaning tape heads, and they're pretty sweet for that purpose, and I still have a good amount of them. I don't know if these are still available for sale, but I try not to waste these, because if I use one, there's just a little bit of smudge on the back, I'll just stick it over there for future use. But yeah, people ask about these. Pretty cool things. So I'm just gonna dab it on a little 99% IPA here, and I'm just gonna try to clean up the heads a little bit here. We'll just clean the audio head, and then I'm also gonna use it to wipe on the capstan here. Now for the pinch roller, I'm just gonna use one of these lint-free cloths and a little glass cleaner. I'm just gonna clean this. I don't like to use alcohol on these, and that's because I feel that alcohol and rubber, at least 99% IPA, kind of dries it out a little bit. Maybe I'm wrong with that, but I'm just gonna give this a good wipe down. A little bit of dirt's coming off. This whole thing is really quite clean on the inside though. All right, for the video heads themselves, what you want to do is you need to make sure when you're cleaning this, you always rotate this clockwise. You never want to go counterclockwise. The heads are very fragile. So I wet this in the IPA, the little chamois stick. And what I'm going to do is just put this onto the head like that, and I'm going to rotate the head clockwise. And I'm making contact with the entire drum, but hopefully that is also getting the heads themselves clean. Yeah, take a look at that. We got a little bit of schmutz off there, off the heads. Now, what can happen when you play certain tapes is the oxide material can actually start to, well, shed off the tapes, and it can clog up the video heads. And the head, which you can see there in that little slit right there, you see that? That can get clogged up with the actual oxide material. And then when that happens is the VCR won't be able to play at all. You'll just see complete static. And you need to make sure that you get it nice and clean. Now, you don't want to go in there and like rub on that at all. You want to make sure that you place this, like I said, flat against the surface here, and then you rotate the drum in that clockwise orientation to try to get it nice and clean. Another technique that I learned from watching other YouTubers, to be honest, 12-volt Vids does it this way, and he used to work for Sony, so knows a thing or two about repairing VCRs, especially Betamax. Take a piece of paper, you wet it with isopropyl alcohol, and you do the same thing. So you hold it up against the drum and you rotate in the clockwise direction. Use your finger to apply a little bit of pressure as you rotate, just like I'm doing here. I can feel the video heads moving underneath my finger as it rotates by. There we go. And you can see that we picked up even more material. Now, I'd say that most of that material was actually not from the heads themselves, because I think they were relatively clean because of this cleaning thing right here. It was actually from the grooves in the drum above the heads. And that's just what rubs against the tape as it plays back. Okay, I think we're nearly ready to try some playback. I'm just gonna hit this with a little compressed air. See the tracks right here that move along the edges of the heads on both sides? You can see there's a bit of grease there, and I don't know if that's, it's pretty hard. It's not really very gummy at all. So I think what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna use this cotton bud here to try to clean up what's on there first. Oh yeah, it's kind of sticky, just to get a lot of this off of there. Okay, and then I'm gonna take some of this white lithium grease here and we're just gonna reapply. Whether this is the right stuff or not, I don't know, but hopefully it's gonna work. There are probably people watching who are VCR repair experts and could tell me that I'm using the wrong grease or I'm applying it wrong, and that may be the case. So check the comments, because there might be some people explaining like a much better way to do this than what I am doing here. I can tell you that you shouldn't be adding any oil to the gears down here. I'm pretty sure that regular oil is not really safe for plastic. I'm pretty sure that white lithium grease, on the other hand, is quite good for things like plastic and whatnot. So if you're gonna be adding it to try to get the gears to turn a little more smoothly, but I'm not gonna add any lubricant to the gears here or on the bottom side unless things are acting up. Okay, I'm gonna put the board back into place here. Make sure that those connectors are seated there, like so. I have this wall wart here, 12 volts, 1.5 amps, and I know that the connector fits the correct polarity, and that's enough wattage for this particular unit. Okay, there was a little bit of a sign of life there out of the VCR. Let's see if the tape goes in and actually loads. Okay, so the tape is loaded, and there it is, it's actually playing. Okay, so stop, let's hit rewind. So far, so good. Let's press play. Looks good. Now, I don't have anything hooked up to this, so we don't know if it's actually playing properly, but at least the transport is working. So that is fast forward. Here's play. Let's hit double speed play. I think that's what that is there. Pretty sure this tape is recorded in SP. Pause. Yep, it's working. Looks like you can do frame advance by just hitting the still button. I can tell it's moving ever so slightly. It just goes one frame at a time. Okay, that's going right to fast forward from pause, play, rewind, but this is a picture search. Looks good. Let's hit stop. Let's hit fast forward, see how fast it goes. It's ramping up the speed. I guess that's as fast as it goes. Let's go into rewind. Same thing, it's like ramps up the speed, it starts slow, ramps up, it probably will slow back down as it's approaching the beginning of the tape. All right, let's hit eject. There we go, spooled up the tape. We don't have any kind of eaten tape, so that worked. Yep, it spooled in the tape correctly. Nice, well, it seems like it's working. Now on the bottom side of the VCR, let's take the belt off and let's give this a little bit of a clean. And I'm just gonna do it with Windex. I don't use IPA on belts. Now, if you have a belt that's a bit loose and you don't feel like buying a new one, this one feels okay. What you can do is you can boil this in water on the stove. You might want to use like an old pot that you don't use for cooking anymore, but you can boil it in some water. And I have had pretty good luck with that, kind of rejuvenating the belts again, making them a little bit more supple, a little more stretchy and flexible than they were originally. So it wasn't too dirty. A little bit of stuff came off on there, but nothing too bad. As far as the mode switch here, we can tell that that's working okay because this obviously goes through all the various modes of transport and the VCR doesn't have any issues. If the mode switch were dirty, you would have issues. And look, it says mode switch right there, actually. Didn't notice that. Mode switch. I don't totally know how to get the mode switch off. You might have to remove the actual mechanism from the plastic case here and then take this thing apart, like this metal bracket here, because this mode switch is underneath that. And then you can maybe pop it off. I bet you there's people watching again who have serviced these LG VCRs and could say exactly how that mode switch comes apart, but I wouldn't just try to force it apart because you might break this and then that would be the end of this VCR as well. All right, the belt is back on. You just want to make sure that you don't have a twist in it. And I think I do. There we go. No more twist. Yeah, tension is quite good on the belt. Doesn't seem like there's any issues with that. Now for the tracks, I put the fresh grease on the other side, on the top side, using that lithium grease. I'm just gonna do the same on the bottom. All right, just plug the VCR in here, and I'm curious if we can actually load the tape with the VCR upside down like this. This could be a disaster, but let's just give it a try. I mean, it loaded okay. It's playing. I have no idea if it's playing correctly or not, but it is. Let's hit stop and rewind. You can kind of see what's going on with this track here moving around. Wonder if I should lubricate this a little bit. Let's hit play. So this is that mode switch you can see turning there. Stop, fast forward. Yeah, I might put some lubricant right there and right there. You see how this thing slides around? And also right here, because it slides back and forth around this post. And the same right here for this screw as well. Play. Wow, it really snaps. Like it feels like it might break eventually because it's gonna hits that end stop there. I think I put way too much lubricant here. We'll just clean that up a little bit. Seems like down there, you see that blue gear? There is a track that obviously is moving parts around, and there's definitely some lubricant in there as well. So I might try to put a little bit of this lithium grease down in there as well. To do that, I just cut the end off one of these cotton swabs so I could just get a little bit on there. I'm just gonna dab it down in there. Well, it seems to be working just fine. Let's see if we can get the tape out of here while it's flipped upside down. It does work. The tape comes right out. That's pretty cool. I don't know if you can take a normal VCR and flip it upside down like this and have it actually work. Let's get this thing hooked up to some AV connection so we can see if it is actually playing back video correctly. The RetroTink is on composite video. You don't even get like a blue screen or whatever. It's possible this thing has no on-screen displays. Let's put this test tape in here. All right, well, let's turn the audio off. Okay, so the video here, I bet you this is the RetroTink doing its thing again. Let's power cycle it. Yeah, so that blown out video I think is just the RetroTink. It does that, and I don't understand why it does that. This is the 5X Pro, and it's like it gets confused with the sync or something, and it just is like super blown out, or you get no picture at all. In fact, we're getting nothing now because it is switched back to S video. There we go. All right, okay, it's looking pretty good. Now, I made this test tape. You can ignore that color stuff at the top. That has to do with the video output device I was using that I recorded on another VCR. So this was actually recorded on, I think, my Panasonic Super VHS in regular VHS mode, of course. Let's try this tape here. This is the Husqvarna Viking Frisia user guide tape. I think I found this at the thrift store for $1 or something. Probably too much, to be honest. All right, I think we're good. We're actually playing the tape. There's a little bit of like static at the bottom on the RetroTink capture device. I think that's normal. This is just the leader. Oh, there we go. Yeah, okay. Audio? I mean, it's linear audio. Doesn't sound great because it's linear audio.
Welcome to the joy of sewing on a Husqvarna Viking sewing machine.
Okay.
I'm Sue Hausman, and it's
Hi,
my
Sue.
privilege to give you your first lesson on your new Husqvarna Viking Frisia. The Frisia actually comes from the beautiful pink flower Frisia.
Let's try the trick play. Okay, well, that's not great. It's not great at all. Let's move ahead one frame. The VCR is actually trying to, yeah, it was advancing ever so slightly there. What about the tracking controls while it's in pause? Does that do anything? No, it doesn't seem to do anything. Okay, well, this is obviously not working very well. I don't even know if this is EP or SP, to be honest, and there's no indicator on the front of this thing, and there seems to be no on-screen displays. I mean, this is like a basic VCR. But hey, it's working. We hit play.
Align the model.
Fast forward. This is the trick play. That doesn't seem to do much. This is in rewind. We don't even have a picture. Oh, there we go. I'd say that this thing is working as well as it should work. Let's eject this tape and go back to this one. I think I recorded this tape in SP. I just want to see, because this thing might be recorded in, this thing doesn't say, but it just says NTSC on there. I don't know. It might not be recorded in SP mode. And I know with the two-head VCR, trick play really doesn't work properly outside of SP. It's been a long time since I've used a two-head VCR. So pause. No, okay. Same issue. Okay, with the video playing, the tracking controls, I'm just pressing track plus. There we go. So that's working as expected. Track minus. Okay. All right, well, trick play doesn't work super well on this VCR, and we hit play, and we hit fast forward. Yeah, okay, well, anyways, two-head VCR, that's what you get. But let's turn the audio up for a second. All right, well, it's working. It's working. I don't know, maybe we can't show this stuff on YouTube. Too racy for YouTube. Let's see if we can rotate the orientation of this VCR while it's playing and see if it works. You know, I've never really tried that on a normal VCR, so I don't know if turning the VCR upside down or moving it around causes playback issues. But let's see what happens. If we turn this thing, let's move this control out of the way. I mean, it's still working fine, mounted on its side like this. Of course, I can slow down the head, which causes issues. That's me poking the head here. And I can poke the flywheel here for the motor. Wow, that has a lot of torque actually. Yeah, pushing it hard enough causes some issues. So the motor for the VCR is here, and it's speed controlled through this orange cable right here. And then basically that goes into the gear set here, which drives the reels and all the other parts of the VCR. If I poke at it, obviously that causes issues, and the same with the head. It is speed controlled, but changing the speed will obviously have an effect on the VCR. All right, so anyways, it's playing well like that. Flipping it upside down, which is how we were running it before. It's working without issue. That's pretty cool. Maybe this is a standard thing for VHS that like holds the tape well enough that it can play in any different orientation. And let's flip this up. So in that orientation, it's fine as well. How about shaking it around? It seems to kind of move the picture around a little bit. This is an analog format, right? So it's cool, it works though. Now back in the early days of VHS, they actually had portable VCRs that was like similar size to this one actually, had a shoulder strap connected here and here. Those early ones also ran off 12 volts, and then you'd plug a camcorder, well, the camera into your VCR, and the VCR would power the camera. So the camera didn't have the tape transport in it. It actually plugged into your VCR, your portable VCR, and you'd sling it over your shoulder and then record with your camera. And that was how you actually recorded on the move. So if the VHS transport mechanism was good enough back then to work slung over your shoulder, I guess still is. And I guess any VCR probably could work in any orientation and doesn't seem to really cause a problem. I don't know. If you've ever had any experience with that for non-portable VCRs, let me know. But this one clearly has no issues working except for that. That's funny. That's the rotation of the head there. So even though this VCR is from '94, some interesting differences between the microcontroller in this and earlier VCRs. What happened with those earlier decks and back to the original top loader VCRs is when you put the tape in, it didn't load the tape onto the heads. That didn't happen until you hit play. And with those early VCRs, when you hit stop, it would actually unload the tape. And therefore, when you pushed eject, it ejected pretty quickly because it didn't have to unload the tape. And if you hit fast forward or rewind, it also would not have the tape threaded while it was fast forwarding. The negative to that is that you didn't have access to, say, real-time counter information, which is required to read the control track. But maybe their idea originally was it was less stressful on the tape itself if it wasn't threaded around all the guides while the tape was fast forwarding or rewinding. I don't remember at what point VHS switched to this way of doing it, where the tape was immediately threaded around the whole transport as soon as the tape was inserted. And then fast forwarding and rewinding always happened with the tape completely threaded. But I definitely remember I had an RCA VCR that was front loader, but it did not do that. It only would load the tape when you hit play. But clearly, at least in '94, when this VCR was a thing, or maybe some manufacturers did and others didn't, it was threading the tape all the time. And if we flip the VCR over here while it's playing, if I hit the eject button, you'll see how long it takes to eject the tape. There it goes. It unthreaded the tape, and then there it is. It came out of the VCR. All right, well, there's not much more to do with this VCR. I'm just going to put this thing back together and close out the video. For the final test, there's no point to use something like this boring old wall adapter. Why don't we make this thing battery powered like it used to be? Well, not like this used to be, but like small VCRs used to be. So USB-C power bank, just the run-of-the-mill stuff. And this is one of those cords. It's USB-C power delivery, 12 volts. If we just plug this into here, there we go. We're getting 12 volts. And then this just goes into the back. And I'm assuming this thing should work. If we power that on, there we go. Tape is moving on the inside. The sewing machine repair tape is in there. Powered up by this thing. And if we hit the old play button here, is it gonna work? Yes, it's working. It's the RetroTink doing its auto gain horribleness again, but looks good. And let's see, sound is working. Let's turn up the volume.
And you'll see that I have 0, 0 for straight.
All right, yeah, it's working as expected. And now we have a battery-powered mini VHS VCR. How cool is that? All right, so that's gonna be it for this video. It's kind of a useless video, right? Sometimes I find it fun just to take diversions into old technology like this. As I mentioned in the beginning of this video, VHS is a dead technology. I really don't recommend anyone go out and actually use this for anything in this day and age. The only reason why you might ever want to play a VHS tape is if you have some old tapes that have stuff on there you want to recover, or you find some tapes with some old recorded TV programs you want to watch. Sure, fun stuff like that, but don't use VHS for anything modern where you actually have to save stuff onto there. Unless you're trying to do it for a look, it just seems like there's no real point. As you saw when we had this thing open, VCRs are filled with moving mechanical parts. And I'm always amazed, to be honest, at something that's 30 years old like this, that was built cheaply, probably stored in harsh environments inside a recreational vehicle, still works after all this time. But you saw all those little bits and pieces that turn and those cogs, and everything is plastic in there. And if any of those things breaks, that's it. You can't go and order replacement parts for this thing anymore. So unless you have two and you take the parts out of the other one, or you have another LG or Goldstar VCR that has similar mechanics in there, and you put two together to make one, it's not really ever going to work again. And let's be honest, a two-head mono VCR with no hi-fi stereo, and it doesn't have a whole lot going for it. The only reason why, like I said, that I like this thing is just because it's really compact, and obviously, well, it can be made to be battery powered because of the 12 volts. And of course, we know now that it can play tapes in any orientation, which is kind of fun. And like I said, the diversion for me is looking at the mechanical nature of VHS, which I do kind of like. And the tapes are kind of cool, and they bring back some nostalgia for me because, of course, I'm a kid of the 80s. There were a lot of years spent recording TV programs on VHS, but of course renting videos from the video store and watching movies. That was just how we consumed video at home. Well, until I got my first DVD player, which was what, around 1997. Actually, funny to think, that was only a few years after this VCR came out. So that's the inside and the operation of the Goldstar GCP-C135 VHS player, designed for trailers and things, and still working today after all these years. If you liked this video, thumbs up. If you didn't, you know what to do. And thanks for bearing with me with my stomach issues and whatever, and I'm going to try to push through and make some more fun and interesting content for everyone on the channel. Thumbs up if you liked it, thumbs down if you didn't. Thanks to my patrons, names are going up the side of the screen. Subscribe, all the other YouTube junk, and I guess that's going to be that. So stay healthy, stay safe, and I'll see you next time. Bye.